ICQ Podcast episode 454, Hiroyasu CQ7373 review. Hello fellow amateur ham radio enthusiasts, and welcome to episode 454 of your ICQ Amateur Ham Radio podcast, supported this episode by our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, we join Martin M1MRB, Dan Kilo Bravo 6 November Uniform, Caryn KD2 Golf Uniform Tango, and Edmund Mike 0 Mike November Golf to discuss the latest amateur ham radio news. Myself, Colin Butler M6BLY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is a feature looking at the Hiroyasu CQ7373. Well, as always, it's our very kind donors that keeps your ICQ podcast advert free, and we'd like to thank our subscription monthly and annual donors for their continued support and keeping our show healthy and advert free. You can make a subscription if you find value in our show, or you can set up a one-off donation to us by visiting our very simple webpage at ICQPodcast.com/donate. Where I say, whatever value you find in the show, turn that into a monetary amount and send it our way, and we'll put that towards the running costs of the show. Right, well, now we're going to join Martin, Dan, Caryn and Edmund to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur ham radio news, including saving Marconi towers and paper batteries. As always, hope you enjoy.
The ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, serving the amateur ham radio community fortnightly since 2008.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to episode 454 of the ICQ Podcast and tonight's news roundtable for that episode. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Dan Romanchik KB6NU. Hi, Dan.
Good evening, Martin, and good evening, Caryn, and good evening, Edmund.
Yeah, good evening to you. We also have Caryn Eve Murray, KD2 GUT, over there in your side of the pond, Dan. So, hi, Caryn.
Well, hello, everyone. And Martin, Dan, Edmund, good to be here. Good to be with you again. The time really flies.
It certainly does. I mean, 4 weeks and bang, it's here. It's certainly rushing through the year. I mean, look at it. We're halfway through April. It's phenomenal how the time goes. And my side of the pond, down there on the south coast, where I've seen some lovely pictures his wife's been publishing up on Facebook with her photography, is Mr. Edmund Spicer, M0MMG.
Hello, Martin. Hello, everybody. And yes, after months and months of grey skies and rain and coldness and general horribleness down here on the south coast of England for the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's been wall-to-wall sunshine pretty much every day, and it's been wonderful.
It certainly has, So let's start off with our first news story. There's been efforts to save some Marconi towers in Canada, and the public were invited to vote on the project. Now, I think the voting is just about finished, but this is another one of those historic sites that we don't want to keep losing all these historic sites. Caryn, what do you think?
Well, I think it's important to know our history, and I think it's important to treasure these places that got us where we are today. I mean, Marconi, well, there are many sites where Marconi operated. We have one here in New York, in fact, and with Marconi Day coming up, we look to these sites to remember. We look to these sites to have special events, and we get on the air from them. I know there's a Marconi station, original Marconi station here in New York that still exists. Think about it. If we lose these, well, we have history books, but it's so much nicer to have the original, not the replica, but the original. That's where our memory resides. That's where our roots are. So I'm hoping that, I guess they're going to have to tally up the vote and find out what people said about saving them. let's hope the vote is unanimous to save them, because it's entirely right. So, crossing my fingers. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, you're dead right. We're losing quite a lot of these radio sites around the world, and I can understand because, land costs money and all these sort of things and upkeep. But as you say, if we lose too many of them, then the history books won't tell us what actually went on in years to come, and people won't actually believe the size of these antennas. I think they're only about 20 foot tall when they look at pictures in books. Dan, what's your thoughts?
Well, I hate to play the devil's advocate here, but while I'm all in favor of keeping them, not tearing them down, the upkeep, I think, on something like this would be incredible. So if they could find a way to make sure that those things are going to be maintained over the years, then I'm all for it. If not, then, that's a lot of money. That's the only thing I'll say is that's a lot of money. I went to the Marconi site on Cape Cod, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. And even just seeing, so the towers are down now, right, at that site. But the footings are still there. So that was still pretty impressive just to see the footings. So I don't know. I to conclude here, I just say, I'm kind of a mixed feelings on it.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I understand that keeping some of these sites live is going to cost an absolute fortune, and you've got to make sure they're safe and not going to fall on people and things like that. Edmund, I know you do Marconi Day, and that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time. I haven't threatened to come and join you yet. I may very well do if I'm invited. But what do you think about this?
Well, first of all, the Marconi related location close to where Caryn is. I'm showing my terrible ignorance of United States geography here. That isn't the Cape Cod Marconi transmitter site by any chance, is it, Caryn?
No, it is not. I have actually been to the site. It's right here in Suffolk County, on the water in the village of Babylon, New York. What my club did one year is they built a replica of the original Marconi station and put it there at the site for Marconi Day. The original does still exist. It was moved farther east, and is actually on the grounds of all things, a high school, not too far from the the original Tesla lab. So that structure still exists, but for whatever reason, it was moved from the village of Babylon.
The Cape Cod station I spoke of is in the state of Massachusetts.
Okay. The reason I mentioned that is that in the last week or so, Walt Kilo 4 Oscar Golf Oscar on the Coastal Waves and Wires YouTube channel published a video where he was on the air from the Cape Cod Marconi transmitter site along with others, because that location is also good for POTA, Parks on the Air. And it's a really interesting video to watch. So if you've got a spare 20 minutes, I would very much recommend watching it. So yes, International Marconi Day this year happens on Saturday, the 26th of April. Marconi was born on the 25th of April, 1874. So this year is the 151st anniversary. And the International Marconi Day is coordinated by the Cornish Amateur Radio Club. And if you go onto their website, which is golfxray4charlieromeo.com, gx4crc.com, there's a whole section dedicated to it, including a list of registered stations. And although most of the registered stations are in either Italy or the UK, it is nevertheless a worldwide event. Despite the club that coordinates it being in the UK, it's not limited to the UK. So if you were thinking of activating a Marconi location, please do go onto the website and register it sooner rather than later. On the date of recording, there are 55 registered stations on there, including possibly some quite rare call signs. The one that jumped out at me was Hotel Victor 1 Charlie November, HV1CN, which is the Vatican Radio headquarters Marconi Day station. And I'm guessing that Vatican City doesn't appear on the airwaves very often, so some rare DX there for you possibly. And the event runs all day long on the Saturday. These days you can use any band and any mode that you like, whereas up until a few years ago you were restricted to the HF bands and SSB and CW. But these days, if you want to make contacts on VHF, UHF using data modes, then you can. And if you work enough stations within that 24-hour period, you can, if you want to, apply for a rather attractive certificate from GX4 CRC. So Amberley Museum in West Sussex will be on the air. The call sign there will be Golf 2 November Mike. This is the one day of the year that we use it, and we should get going from about 10 o'clock local time in the morning through until about 4 p.m. in the afternoon, I should think. And I just hope propagation will be a bit better when the 26th of April rolls round than it has been for the most part of the last week or 10 days or so. HF has not been good. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, I noticed it hadn't been particularly great, but hey, that's the interesting amateur radio. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Right, let's move to our next news story. Hams are invited to monitor Meteor scatter events. So this is something else that the Hamsci guys are doing, and they're wanting us, if we've got time, to monitor some of these Meteor scatter things. Dan, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I like this. I like Hamsci, and I like this event. And I actually have a 6-meter antenna up now. I actually put it up because there's a question on the tech question pool, that talks about meteor scatter. And I keep saying when I teach the class that one of these days I'm going to actually work some meteor scatter. And now that I have an antenna and this event's coming up, I'm going to make every effort to make some meteor scatter content.
Well, that sounds good, mate. That sounds really good, and I'm sure you'll enjoy yourself. Edmund, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I'm in the same situation as Dan, apart from the fact that I haven't got a 6-meter antenna up in the air. I've never done meteor scatter. I think I'm right in saying from reading around on the subject that in the UK at least, the best time to do it is around about dawn, maybe from an hour before to an hour afterwards, although you can have random contacts at any time during the day, of course. And if you're in the UK at least, you would do well to point your beam eastwards. But that is the sum knowledge of meteor scatter from this end, I'm afraid, so I can't wax lyrical about it based on personal experience. But good luck to everybody taking part, and I hope that Hamsci gets a lot of data that they'll be able to crunch and perhaps even discover some things off the back of it. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of data being collected by Hamsci, and I think, somebody's going to completely rewrite propagation at some point in time based on all the information they've got. I'm sure they will. Caryn, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, what's interesting about this one, Martin, is that this is a dress rehearsal of sorts. If I don't know if meteors can have dress rehearsals, but this does seem to be something of a dress rehearsal. This is not the big kahuna, okay? The Lyrid shower is not the biggest of the year. Those are the Perseids and the Geminids. Perseids are in August. Geminids will be in December. But Hamsci's big interest in this is basically to get people ready for this is sort of off Broadway, okay? And the other two are the curtain goes up on Broadway. But the idea is to get in the game now, get your equipment set up, do your QSOs, make your contacts if you can. And this way, if you're going to be ready for August and December when it happens. I think that's great. Preparedness is really important. This is not considered the most prolific of the meteor showers. It only has maybe 20 meteors per hour. It's not rush hour traffic, let's just say that. But you should be able to have some fun with it, and you should be able to know from participating whether you're ready for August and December later this year. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, well, that's good fun. And, okay, even though it's preparing for the big ones, it's still fun to go out and do these, and we'll still get some useful data from it. I'm sure Hamvention will be really pleased with the data they get. So, in fairness, good one. And we wish... Go on, Dan.
And let's just say that the Lyrids, which we're talking about here, are on the 21st and 22nd of April. So it's coming up pretty quickly. It'll be the day this podcast is released and then the next day.
Yeah, Easter weekend.
Right.
Oh, dear. Okay, let's move to our next news story. I'm going to get you to go first on this one, Edmund. Not for the reasons for the reasons I discussed with you in the discussion earlier, not suggesting that you are 101. But ham radio news presenter retires at 101. Phenomenal, this guy. He's done really, really well. What do you think, Edmund?
Well, many congratulations on reaching 101 at all. That's a major achievement in itself. But I've said before, I honestly think that if you're active in amateur radio, it keeps your brain going and gives you things to think about and stops your brain rusting and seizing up through inactivity. And completely by coincidence, hand on heart, this is true, I kid you not, this very morning I was tuning around the 2 meter FM simplex channels, and I heard two local stations talking to each other. One of them I recognised, the other one I'd never heard before in my life. And the one I'd never heard before in my life said that he had had quite a long break from amateur radio, and from the way he was talking, I think that break was measured in decades rather than years. But he had decided to get back into it to see what had changed, set a station up, try to remember all the stuff that he had learnt when he sat his RAE, because he had a G6 call sign, which I think from memory is the early 1980s. And then right at the end of the contact, in an almost throwaway line, he said, I've just turned 90, so I thought I needed something to occupy myself with. And I nearly fell off my chair because, yes, okay, you can't tell how old somebody is based on what their voice sounds like. But up till then, he had been so lucid and well-spoken and thinking clearly. You know, he was obviously very much with it. He wasn't confused or forgetting things or anything like that. So when he said he was 90, to say I was surprised would be an understatement. So, okay, I know that's not quite 101, but further evidence, if it were needed, that amateur radio does keep you young mentally. So congratulations to this gentleman. He's got a G0 call sign, so I guess that means he's been licensed since, well, when would that be? 80s or 90s, wouldn't it? Because call signs were still being issued sequentially then. So, well, even if it was, say, the 1990s, that's 30 years worth, isn't it, at the very least? So amateur radio has clearly had a good effect on him. And thank you for your service to GB2RS. and have a very happy and healthy and long retirement.
Yeah, I'll say interesting. And we do come across some people that are very, very interesting on the radio. And that's what makes our hobby interesting. Now, Caryn, GB2RS is the radio site of Great Britain's broadcast. You possibly know this, and it usually goes out on 2 meters on a Sunday at 10 o'clock local time on 145,525 megahertz. So, yeah, Peter has been phenomenal. But over to you. What's your thoughts?
Well, I love this story. I personally love this story because it underscores what I believed from my first day on the air, that amateur radio is good for body, mind, and spirit. And just because he is retiring as a presenter, that doesn't mean he's not going to get on the air. Maybe he wants more time on the air, like the rest of us. I have a feeling he'll be he maybe he wants to hunt POTA. I don't imagine. Well, I wouldn't say he won't activate POTA, but he wants to make QSOs, chase some DX. He's active. That's just great. And Edmund, your story reminded me of something quite lovely. It's hard to tell somebody's voice when most of your QSOs are CW, as mine are, but oftentimes some of the older hams that I will have a QSO with will write to me. And what I love most in this case is they write via postal mail. So I will get a letter in the mail. I mean, a real letter. And I answer every bit of mail I get is answered. And I was so in love with this letter from this gentleman who sent me pictures of his dog and said he's widowed and he loves amateur radio because it makes him happy, and his dog is in the shack with him. And I forget his age, but he was certainly up there. And I wrote him back, and we corresponded back and forth for a bit. And I think this is proof that, no matter what age you begin this hobby, you can make it into the Quarter Century Wireless Association, even if you start a little later in life than most. I think there is nothing on earth better for your spirit than to key the mic or to hit that key, pound the brass, and contact another person. It will keep you feeling young forever. And certainly it will keep you feeling alive and happy. So I think this gentleman is in for a good time. I certainly hope so. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, I think he's done well, and he has the right to retire and take it easy as well. But yeah, it'll be every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock local time. He will have been reading the news on, I'm assuming 2 meters FM, although the GB2RS does go out on other frequencies. Dan, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I only have one thing to add here, and that is, I hope when I'm 101, I'm as active as this guy is. I mean, it's phenomenal, really.
Yeah, well, that goes for me too, Dan, because, I've still got quite a few years to go to try and even get to 101, but it doesn't seem that far away these days.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what episode number it'll be if we're still doing this when we're 101, Dan, but it'll be fun. Oh, dear. Okay, let's move to our next news story. And this news story, it says the battery looks good on paper because it is paper. And I think that this is a group that are trying to produce a battery that is good for the environment. And they're using paper as the insulator between, obviously, the electrodes in there. So, Caryn, do you want to go first on this one?
Sure. And as Edmund rightly said, this story we're discussing in April, and the first thing you think is, oh, April Fool. But no, not so much the case. This has been going on, this kind of research has been going on for quite some time, because we're not talking about loose leaf paper, memo pad paper, but cellulose, the cellulose in plants that contain sugars and other things that are useful for this sort of process in generating energy. So there's experimentation going on. And of course, we are all interested in battery technology because we like to have a source of energy, especially if we're doing emergency communications or going out and doing portable. This is still on the drawing board, sort of, because right now the greatest success that they've had has been in powering medical sensors and really ultra tiny devices. Your ICOM 7300 will not run off of something like this, sadly. But it is definitely worth noting. Why paper? Why paper? Good question. Because it's green. Okay, there are two types of these batteries that appear to be in development now, and one is a one and done. You use it, and when it's spent, it's fully compostable. These are like little button batteries. And then there's another battery that is rechargeable, and that's in the works. And that is supposed to ultimately replace lithium batteries. That may actually have greater usage for larger pieces of equipment. The story, one of the stories I found said it would be for use in grid storage and for EVs, for electrical vehicles. So we'll see where it goes. We are going to be needing something, but that too is compostable. So these do show promise, but science does move slowly in some cases, and in this case it has. So let's see what comes out of the lab next, and we'll just keep our eyes open and hope for some better news about whether we can start taking them out on summits and into the parks. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, very interesting, Caryn, on that one. Well, last episode we talked about miniature nuclear batteries and their uses. So there's a lot going on in battery technology at the moment, and having a battery that, when it's run out or ceased to work, you can not corrupt the environment. If it's compostable down, then that's another very good option. I think battery technology, as I've said before, is going to move on quite significantly. Dan, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I like this story because it shows that there is a lot of work going on in developing battery technology. And I just heard a radio show that talked about when we're going to run out of materials that we currently use, like oil and stuff like that. And they were talking about lithium, because lithium is the big thing in batteries these days. And they were saying something like, we only have 30 to 50 years worth of lithium supply. So, we got to start really working on this battery technology, because, 30 years is in the grand scheme of things is not very long. And if we run out of lithium, well, how are we going to power things, and not only do we power things with them, I mean, we're using these batteries to store all this renewable energy. If we don't have a really good battery technology to store, wind power and solar power, then we're kind of screwed, So anyway, that's why I like this story. I mean, it does show that people are working on this. And the one thing they said in this show, which was kind of interesting, they called it the Malthusian twist. And the guy who was talking about this said, well, when we come to a point in history where the old technologies don't seem to work that well, there's always something that seems to pop up out of nowhere like magic to power us through. And so, maybe this paper battery is going to be the Malthusian twist to battery technology.
Well, it may very well be, Dan. May very well be. And as I say, like you said, It's great news that they are investigating all sorts of new technologies. Edmund, I know you and I run with these LiPo4 batteries when we go out portable, but as Dan says, the lithium won't be around forever. This could be interesting.
Absolutely, and the idea of using paper does seem to be very, very cool to me. I like that. When I first saw the voltage, 0.75 volts, I thought, well, that's not very much, but you would only need 2 of those in series to come up to 1.5 volts, and that's the nominal voltage of a primary cell. So maybe if you could stick a few of these in series and then parallel them up, you may end up with a useful capacity for low current drain devices like a remote control or an LCD clock or something like that. My only question would be, what's the self-discharge rate like? Would it hold on to the energy for a very long time, or if you just sat it on a shelf for a year or 2 or 3, would it self-discharge without ever being put into anything? But aside from that, yes, I think this is really good, and I will watch this one closely for developments. I like the idea of this, Martin. Back to you.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. And as Caryn said, these are going to be short-term batteries, like we use AA cells at the moment and things like that. This is this type of battery technology. It's not going to be battery technology that we were talking about 2 weeks ago, where we were talking about nuclear power and it holding the charge for years. So, in fairness, they both need to be investigated, so that's a good one. Right, moving to our next news story. Zero Retries newsletter hosting a conference. Dan, you know that one of the gentlemen is doing this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a great story. I do know Steve, NAGNJ, pretty well. Well, I'd say pretty well, but I know him quite a bit. And he what he's doing here is he's basically taking the place of what used to be the Tapper Digital Communications Conference. The Tapper DCC used to be held after the GNU Radio Conference, just like this Zero Retries Digital Conference is going to be held. And I think this is going to fill a void. I don't really know what happened with Tapper, why they're not doing their digital communications conference anymore. But I think this fills a real need, and Steve is certainly keeping up with digital technology. So, if anyone out there is listening is interested, I would suggest that you subscribe to his newsletter. It's free, and overall, I think this is just going to be a great thing.
Well, it certainly sounds it, Dan. Certainly sounds it. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't aware of this until it appeared in our news stories. So that's a good one. Caryn, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I'm very happy to know that this is not only taking place, but taking place on the heels of the GNU conference. So it's likely to inherit some of the attendees from there. But I think what's especially great is that Steve, the guy organizing it, is expanding upon producing a newsletter and going into the realm of a conference, a real live conference where people can be with one another. Nothing is better. Well, I won't say nothing, but few things are better than brainstorming and sharing one-on-one. During the pandemic, when a lot of offices went to virtual offices and people had to work from home, I heard from a lot of folks that creativity to some degree did decline because you have everybody working in an isolated environment, and the collaborative spirit did not thrive quite as well. So I think getting people together to be able to brainstorm and share things and do presentations and just be with one another, this will be a great gathering, and who knows what may come of this. So it's pretty exciting. Back to you, Martin.
Oh yeah. It's interesting, I would suggest. Edmund, last words on this one?
I'm living in the wrong country, aren't I? Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend on Saturday, the 13th of September, because apart from anything else, I'll be getting over the excitement of attending the National Ham Fest at Newark the weekend before. But I hope everybody who goes has a great time.
Yeah, we will be at Newark, as you said. And, well, we can sign up for the newsletter, I think, Edmund. I think I shall probably sign up for the newsletter and see what comes out and go from there. So, nice one. Like, moving to our last news story, and I'm going to get Caryn to go first yet again on this one. Caryn, South African Radio League commits to helping others in the developing nations. I think this is good. What do you think?
I think this is terrific. South African Radio League has something to celebrate, 100 years of existence. So being 100 years old, the overriding theme, I think, for this roundtable is being over the age of 100 is a good thing. Everybody needs an Elmer. We've all benefited from Elmers and people mentoring us and helping us. And so SARL, the South African Radio League, on the occasion of its 100th birthday in May, has made an announcement that it is going to make as much of a concerted effort as is possible to assist nations in sub-Saharan Africa who may have absolutely no amateur radio, and many of them do not. It just doesn't exist there. Nigeria does appear to have a robust presence for ham radio. Egypt, certainly, and Namibia and South Africa down in the south have amateur radio, but other countries do not. And the reasoning here is that this is not just so people can win awards and do POTA and soda, whatever, and have QSOs. This is really life-saving work. This is so they have the capacity for MCOM. There are terrible weather systems and weather conditions that sweep through Africa. It is known for some horrible natural disasters. Likewise, the tragedy of civil unrest in some of the nations. These radio connections truly would be life-saving. And so SARL, in its wisdom as the granddaddy of radio leagues there, is going to do as much as I guess the politics and the finances will allow in each case, and make an effort. And I think it's a very noble one. And in the meantime, just to speak to what SARL is doing to mark its 100 years, I do want to mention there is an ongoing marathon. It's a marathon QSO party that South African Radio League began in January, and it's continuing all year. It will continue to the end of December with special event call signs. And one of them to listen for, if you're looking to add to your log, is ZS100 SARL for South African Radio League. Okay, that's it, Martin. Back to you.
Well, I think it's great that us amateurs will try and help others. This in Africa, to my ignorance, predominantly is that there's not much amateur radio goes on in a lot of the countries in Africa, possibly due to the cost of the equipment and the knowledge and one thing or another. So if something costs too much, you tend to turn your back on it. But I think it's a good one. I think it's a really good one. Edmund, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, yes, excluding some of the countries along the North African coast, such as Morocco, Algeria, and is it Ceuta, the Spanish enclave, if that's the right name for it. With the exception of those, I've only ever heard South Africa from anywhere else in the whole African continent. So, and I think that was on a north-south path on 15 meters SSB many years ago. So I think this is a great initiative, and I'll certainly be listening out for that special event station call sign. I'm not sure I rate my chances of working it particularly, but I'll certainly be listening out for it. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, well, that's good news. Well, I remember a few years ago, quite a few years ago, I went to Tunisia with Mrs. B, and at the time, Tunisia, I think, had one or two radio clubs, and they were only allowed to operate from the radio club. You weren't allowed to have amateur radio equipment at your house. That's changed recently in the last 4 or 5 years, but, things are moving on, and the more people understand what we're doing and understand the radio, the better. Dan, last words on this one?
Well, I'm actually kind of excited about this particular item. A couple of years ago, I was emailed, a fellow in Uganda emailed me about possibly helping him set up a amateur radio station at a school he was trying to set up. And as I've mentioned on the podcast before, I'm a member of the Rotary Club, and Rotary does a lot of international projects. And so I got to thinking, well, maybe there's something here that I could get Rotary involved with and get him set up to do amateur radio. Well, for one thing and another, that particular project didn't quite work out, but I think that maybe I could somehow get Rotarians who are also amateur radio operators interested in this project somehow. And maybe we can even somehow get the SARL some Rotary International Foundation money to fund this kind of project. These are all some really partly baked ideas here. And I only found out about this in the pre-show when we talked about it. But I think this is could be a really good thing. You know what? In Rotary, we have a thing called international fellowships, and international fellowships coalesce around a particular interest. There's skiing international fellowship, there's a wine international fellowship, and there used to be an amateur radio fellowship, and that sort of has gone dormant for the last year or two. But something like this could possibly breathe some new life into it. And anyway, like I say, a lot of this is partly baked ideas now in my head, but I think this could be quite an interesting thing overall.
I think you're right, Dan. The other thing I was thinking about when you were talking was, I remember, I think it was the Ukraine, when the Ukraine went, or Russia and Ukraine had their set to, there were people sending surplus radios to the Ukraine. Now, I think most of us have more than we actually need and probably even use. If it works, maybe the South African Amateur Radio League might, do a request to have stuff sent to them so they can redistribute equipment into other countries just to get it started. I don't know, but it could be. Well,
yeah, so the way these Rotary projects usually work is that a Rotary club in a particular area, in let's take Uganda, for example, there are Rotary clubs there. And what would happen is a club here, say in the U.S. or in Europe or anywhere in the developed world, would partner with that Ugandan Rotary club and set up this project. And maybe in the case of the SARL, we would also partner with them somehow too, which is certainly, a possibility. And so it's the local clubs, local Rotary clubs that are, sort of keeping an eye on what's happening, and the developed world clubs are providing the resources. So yeah, I mean, I could see, like you say, I've got some radios I could, possibly donate myself to this cause, and I'm sure there's lots of them out there. So yeah, I mean that all this could be a possibility, and it just takes a lot of work. That's the deal with these international projects, Rotary projects, is it takes a lot of work. First, you have to, find the partner in the countries that you're talking about, and then figure out what it is you actually want to do, what you can do, and then you can request funds. And the Rotary International Foundation does have a lot of money to supply to these projects, and it takes a vision. It takes a vision to know how you would set up the project and then use the money, and that's where I think Rotarians who are also amateur radio operators could come in. I think we really could do something good here. So anyway, that's why I was excited to read about this project, and I'm going to be contacting the SARL and just proposing some half-baked ideas to them and see where it could go.
Yeah, sounds really interesting, Dan, and you know more about that subject than I do. So, but okay, we all think it's a great idea to share the knowledge within Africa. I'm not gonna call out any particular country, but share the knowledge within Africa. And if we can, great. You know, why shouldn't people in Africa enjoy our hobby as much as we do?
Well, not only that, this is where the whole idea of amateur radio as an aid to development comes in, an aid to education, and you know that's one of the core values, if you will, of ham radio, and that's where we could really show what's good about ham radio.
Certainly can, Dan. Certainly can. As I say, even over here in the UK, I was rubbish at history and geography when I was at school because the teacher was boring, and in fairness, I weren't interested. I've learnt more about geography and history since I've been a ham radio operator than I ever learnt in school. So
absolutely
on the way. Anyway, that concludes our news stories. Let's find out what the guys have been up to since the last time we spoke on the podcast. We always go ladies first on this group, Caryn, so over to you.
Well, this is going to be a big weekend. By the time the listeners hear this podcast, I hopefully will be deep into Support Your Parks weekend. If all goes well, I'll get out both weekends into the parks and activate what I can, and then come home and hunt what I can. There's also the Straight Key Century Club is having the Randomgram event, which is a wonderful way to train and keep yourself sharp with your copy of random groups, code groups, 5 letters and numbers. It's so much fun. It's just a way to work your brain really, really hard. So it's going to basically be a weekend of not coming up for air, which is one of the nicest, or coming up for going on the air, I should say, because it's all radio. It's going to be all radio. I'm also I'm going to be necessarily vague here, okay, guys? But let's just say I'm in the final stages of my project to create and enable myself to do ultra portable, not the 891, but another radio that some of you have talked to me about. And I've done some research with the help of some wonderful, wonderful friends. That includes you, Martin. And I've asked a lot of questions about radios and antennas, and tried to consider what I will be doing when I go out and activate ultra portable. Let's just leave it at that. I have made my decision. We're going to wait on announcing that because I want to wait for everything to get here. It's been ordered. So yes, I'm being vague and I'm being mysterious. That's part of the fun. So I'll leave it at that. And maybe next time we have a roundtable, I might have possibly even gotten on the air with my ultra portable station. I'll send it back to you until then, Martin.
Well, I know you and I spoke about a particular radio, and the most important thing is you've done your research, you've listened to people, you've done your research, hopefully you've chosen the right one. And as I say, I'll be happy if you have. And Caryn, it's always fun when you get a new bit of gear, so go for it. Right, Dan, what have you been up to since the last time we spoke?
So, because of course I'm always up to something here, but I have 2 things I'll mention here. One actually has a rotary connection. I operated a special event station, W7P, which the Narwhal Amateur Radio Society set up to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the announcement that the Salk polio vaccine was safe and effective. Now, the Rotary connection here is that for the last 45 years, Rotary International has been trying to eradicate polio around the world, and it's really been phenomenal, the success we've had. If folks want to just see a pictorial of this, go to endpolio.org, and there's sort of a timeline thing there, and it shows how over the years the incidence of polio has just shrunk to now it's really only in the wild in 2 countries, Pakistan and India, and it's really kind of an amazing story. Anyway, I saw an announcement that this club was doing this on Mastodon, which is sort of a open source geeky kind of Twitter, and I signed up to do some spots on CW because they didn't have any CW operators. So over 4 hours, I did about 60 contacts, and I don't know how effective I was in educating people about the End Polio campaign, but I tried to do that. So that was a lot of fun. And actually, I mentioned before about Rotary having an international fellowship for amateur radio operators. We actually did this 5 or 6 years ago. And we did this in February, not April, to coincide with the founding of Rotary, which started in, I don't know, it's like 110 years now, or maybe longer. But anyway, that was kind of a fun thing to do. The second thing is our ham radio club here in Ann Arbor has started partnering with the local one of the local maker spaces, MakerWorks. And we now hold our club meetings there. And I've also taught my latest one-day tech class there. And I'm going to start teaching a basic electronics class there. And I'm kind of excited about this because, it's not just teaching about ham radio, not just teaching people how to get their tech licenses, but actually teaching them, the basics of electricity and how to turn on LEDs and what current is all about and how to current and voltage make power and stuff like that. So we're going to be doing the first class in a couple of weeks, and I'm pretty excited about doing this. So those are the 2 main things, and of course, lots of other stuff. But back to you, Martin.
Well, Dan, I hope your class goes well, teaching the electrics and electronics. Passing information on. I know you and I both enjoy helping people and passing information on. So I wish you every success with that one. And great to hear you've just done another one-day tech class, which is good. Right, Edmund, what have you been up to since last time we spoke?
Well, on Saturday, the 12th of April, I took part in the latest 145 Alive event. Had to do it from home because I had family commitments that day, so wasn't able to travel to high ground. And even at my sea level location with nothing more than a collinear and about 25 watts, I managed to work 7 stations simplex, including one in a village not too far away who has been licensed a while, doesn't have the possibility of putting up any HF antennas, and had only got a modest 2-meter station, so he had come on the air specially for the event. So I think events like that do have their value. They bring people onto the air who might not be active otherwise. I think across the UK it was quite a successful event overall. And if on YouTube you look at the Radio Rover channel, which belongs to Fraser, Mike Zero, Echo Fox India, he has put together a short collage of photographs. It's only a video that lasts about just over 2 minutes, of various photos that were taken by various people taking part in 145 Alive. So it was good fun. I certainly enjoyed myself. and looking forward to the next one. The Saturday after the release, the 26th of April, we've already said, is International Marconi Day. I will be down at Amberley Museum, where we'll be using Golf 2 November Mike, which these days is a club call sign, originally belonged to the late Gerald Marcuse. And we'll be on the air probably starting on 40 metres and maybe going up to the higher HF bands if conditions allow. But we'll only be using SSB. We won't be doing CW or data modes or anything like that. And mentioning Amberley Museum, news broke this afternoon, when we're recording this on Wednesday the 16th of April, that if you are a current RSGB member, a new member benefit for 2025 is that you can get reduced entry to half a dozen different museums. Discounts are between 20% and 50%. And one of those museums is Amberley. And as far as I can see, this is active straight away. It's already been introduced. So if you're anywhere vaguely close to the south of England and you wanted to come along and visit the museum, and the museum overall is so much more than just the amateur radio station. The amateur radio station is just a tiny percentage of everything that there is there. If you wanted to come down, if you go to rsgb.org/partner-museums and follow the instructions from there, as I say, one of the half dozen museums that you can select is Amberley. So click on the link, fill in a form, and you will get sent a discount voucher. So that's good news, and I thoroughly recommend it. Beyond that, we're going to be into May, aren't we? I don't know exactly what I'm doing in May yet. Possibly something from a local bunker on Victory in Europe Day on the 8th of May, and definitely something from a windmill somewhere on National Mills Weekend, which is the second weekend in May, but I'll mention those things on another podcast episode a bit nearer the time. So that's everything. No, of course, one final thing. Throughout April, Golf Bravo Zero into IARU, International Amateur Radio Union, the call sign has been on the air despite not great HF conditions recently. The call sign has been, I think, worked pretty much worldwide on all kinds of bands. If you stick the call sign into dxheat.com, you can see where and how many times it's been spotted on the cluster, but it's been very, very successful. And I think a lot of the volunteers who are helping with it have got considerably better appointed stations than I have. But I've done a few stints on 40 metres SSB, and I'm going to do a few more before the end of April is out. So hope to work as many people as possible. And I would like to send greetings to Victor in County Antrim in Northern Ireland. His call sign, Mike India 0 Juliet Sierra Tango. He doesn't have an antenna for transmitting at the moment, but he received me on 40 metres SSB and sent very kindly an SWL report via Facebook. So thank you for that, Victor. And he also mentioned that he's a big fan of the ICQ podcast. So thank you for your kind words and your words of encouragement there, Victor. And as I said in the Facebook message I sent to you, really, Martin and Colin are the two gentlemen who really make it happen. I'm just somebody who rocks up once a month and talks rubbish for a couple of hours. But I'm sure we all appreciate your very kind words. And I will try to be on on the HF bands, 40, 20 and 17 metres, mainly SSB, as much as I can, using Golf Bravo 0 India Alpha Romeo uniform between now and the 30th of May. So 30th of April. So if you hear me, please do give me a call, and propagation permitting. There's been an awful lot of deep and rapid QSB, but propagation permitting, I will try to work you. Back to you, Martin.
Well, Edmund, I keep telling you, you are a member of the ICQ family. You don't just rock up every night. You're a member of our family. So, and we're great to have you. Right, what have I been up to? Well, first thing, it was quite major. I did a network reconfiguration here at home. Some of you go, wow, for the speed. This is the slowest speed that an internet provider gives me because I chose the cheapest option. I technically should have had 150 megs up and 150 megs down. And due to my original router, I was only getting 100 meg. Well, recently Colin did an upgrade to his network. His router rippled down to me. I've installed it now on my network, and I've got 150 megs either way. Not that I need it, but it's nice to keep things up to date. I did do a feature for this episode on a mobile radio, and you'll hear that in the feature, but I've been playing with that. I was out on 145 Alive with the guys on Epsom Downs. Edmund, I didn't invite you because A, it was a long way to come, and B, I don't operate. I just go and make sure that the guys who've set the station up are able to use the club call sign because I'm a full license holder. But that's the only reason I do that one. I had a big panic early part of this week, a real big panic, because I've been looking after Mrs. B with her knee operation. I haven't been into the shack for about 6 weeks. So I go into the shack and I switch my ICOM 9700 on UHF, and I transmitted and watched it change frequency when I transmit. Then when I released the microphone, it changed to another frequency. It was all over the place. And I was really going to get worried. And I thought, yeah, I mean, these new radios are literally like computers with a radio chip in them pretty much. You know, so I thought, oh, no, this will be a back to manufacturer. Then I sat quietly and thought about it and thought, hang on, first thing anybody should do is a factory reset. So I did a factory reset, and then I reinstalled the backup for the radio, and it's behaved perfectly okay afterwards. So what I think happened is either the battery in the radio had dropped so low that it got some corrupt memory, or it was certainly probably some corrupt memory in the radio. Now it's been on for a while, battery's charged, and we're away. So that saved me a mega panic. And I have been on the talk group, and I have been operating mobile. So, yeah, I had a long conversation with Phil the other day, VK6ADF. I think Phil told me we did 2 hours. He said, but that's no record for us. Hi. But yeah, the talk group gets used, not mega, but it gets used. And as I say, I've been operating from the car as well. Right. So that's what I've been up to. Well, all that's left for me to do now is to thank the guys for turning up, and we'll move to the next part of the podcast. I'd like to thank Mr. Dan Romanchik KB6NU.
Well, my pleasure, Martin, and hope to do it again next month.
We certainly will, Dan. I'd also like to thank Caryn Murray, KD2GUT.
It's always a good time, guys. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, we have fun, and that's the most important part of doing this. You know, we do have fun, and we are pretty much a family as a group. As I said earlier, when Edmund, you are a member of the family. So, yeah, we also have Mr. Edmund Spicer, M0MMG.
Yeah, sorry, 73 Martin, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problems. All right, guys, I'll say 73s, and I'll move to the next part of the podcast. 73, guys.
73.
73.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
And now it's time to have a look at the news in brief for me, Colin M6BOY. We start off with news here on the RSGB AGM, which has happened recently. Well, the board has met and chosen Stuart Bryant, Golf 3, Yankee Sierra X-Ray, to continue his role of board chair, and Peter Boyer, G4, Mike Juliet Sierra, to continue as vice chair. Both will retain those roles until the 2026 AGM. Full details of all the RSGB board members are available on their website, so we'll put a link to this on the ICQ podcast webpage, and you can check out, your board member, particularly if you're looking for someone in particular to liaison with in relation to a specific role. So that'll give you that information there. We finish off with news that, unfortunately, news has come through from our friends in Canada. The Radio Amateurs of Canada have decided, as a national association, not to attend Hamvention in Ohio. The organisation has cited tensions between Canada and the US as contributing towards the decision. Basically, this is a follow-on, obviously, to political inferred sort of conflicts that are going on at the moment, around politics around the world. On a personal level, I think it's a real shame that politics is coming in to the amateur radio world, particularly at the event level, where it's always a great opportunity to discuss, debate and inform people about what's going on. But hopefully, as I say, with a few weeks to go, maybe the friends in Canada might reconsider, or our friends in Ohio might make it easier for them to attend in some form, as I say, to keep that spirit going. So let's see what happens there over the next few weeks. But I say it certainly would be a shame for the REC not to attend, Dayton Hamvention. Right, now we're going to head over to our features episode, and this episode's feature is a review on the Hiroyasu CQ7373. As always, hope you enjoy.
And now for this episode's feature from the ICQ Podcast.
Hi guys, for this episode's feature, I want to talk about a radio that Chris Howard bought, M0TCH, and he decided to lend it to me to do the review. Now, it's an interesting radio. It's a mobile 2 meters 70 cms mobile rig from China. So this one's called a Hiroyasu CQ7373. Now I'll spell the name because I probably pronounced it wrong. It's HIROYASU. So interesting radio. Interesting the box it came in. It says it's 8 bands. Well, in all honesty, it covers on receive between 108 megs and 615 megahertz. On transmit, it'll do VHF on 137 to 147. So it will be out of band, guys. If you you've got to make sure you keep in band. And for UHF, between 400 megahertz and 480 megahertz. So should cover the 2 meters and 70 cms bands in most parts of the world without any problems at all. Maximum power output on 2 meters is 50 watts. On 70 cms, its maximum power output is 45 watts. And there are intermediate to middle power of 25 watts and low power of around 10 watts. So it does work quite well. You can set the display up to display multiple, so 2 things at once, so you can monitor 2 frequencies at once. It has a detachable front head, and in the box comes all the fitting bits and pieces to put the detachable front head in your car and put the radio somewhere else. So albeit all. It also has the ability of speakers in the head unit, so you haven't got to put a separate loudspeaker or run it from wherever you put the radio. There is loudspeakers in the head unit. It says it has an intelligent cooling fan. Well, I would expect that. I can't see that I'd expect anything different. It also has the ability of receiving NOAA weather forecast channels. Now, that will depend where you are, and I'm pretty much sure that if you're in the States you can get those. Other parts of the world you may not be able to. On the tone squelch side, it has CTCSS, DTMF, 2-tone, 5-tone and MDC 1200, whatever that is. I need to work that one out at some point in time. So, all in all, when you open it up, the box, it's quite a tiny package. Quite a tiny package in fairness. Okay, so we then decided to have a look at programming it. And in fairness, this has got a really good opportunity for programming. The programming lead you need to get for this, you already have, I would almost guarantee. It's a standard USB-C lead. So a USB-C to a USB-A, plug it into your computer, and that's your programming lead. As long as you've got a data lead, not just a charge lead, it's a standard USB-C lead. Plug it into the back of the radio, download the software, and the beauty is it doesn't require you to install drivers. You just install the software, say download from the radio, and it goes off and it finds the radio and it downloads for you. Software is perfectly acceptable, works very, very well. It's not too difficult to find your way around it. So all being all, that's not too bad. Now, first thing I did was I made some local contacts, and I've got a couple of repeaters, one on UHF, one on VHF fairly close to me. Tested it on those, and it worked very well. Also tested it with a local ham who's visually impaired and lives about 2 miles from me, and he was very complimentary about the audio, so that worked well. Okay, so therefore, it all sounds good. Well, we decided that this weekend, or last weekend, the weekend before the podcast got released, in the UK there was a special event on called 145 Alive. Now 145 Alive is various nets all over 2 metres, all over the UK and Northern Ireland. I think Southern Ireland may also participate, but anyway, a large number of 2 metre nets. And it's on for about 3 hours, from midday local time till 3 in the afternoon local time. And the FM 2 metre band is absolutely heaving for that amount of time, which is great news. So we decided to give this poor little radio a try. And I went along with my friend Tim and Chris West, and we set up the 145 Alive station, and I asked the boys if they'd give this a go. Well, we ran it for an hour and a half of the contest time, and in fairness, we started to spot some limitations of it. Now, I said that before, you got great audio, and the visually impaired guy said great audio. Problem is, the volume control on this is not a volume control. It's a rotary encoder. So you start turning the volume down, and it would probably be okay if you were driving around the car and you got background noise. You would never turn the volume down that low. But if you're parked up, and this does do airband, if you're parked up and listening to airband, you might have it at a low level, just in the background, so you can keep an eye on things. But the problem is, you turn the volume down, and it's like hitting a cut-off point. So you turn the volume down, and it gets quieter and quieter, and suddenly it disappears. And you think, what? And the other thing I found was a bit awkward is there's no squelch control as such. You go into the menus and you set the menu between 0 for no squelch and 9 for maximum squelch. The problem is, I think the squelch levels are set too aggressively. So when you went to squelch level 1, which is the lowest, we were losing signals that were dropping in and out of the radio at the time, which I think other radios would have heard no problems at all. So I think the squelch level set too high in the firmware. The other thing is, because you're using the same rotary encoder, a couple of times we'd set the squelch level to off, then got it back into the radio and found that the volume control had decided to use the same setting, although it shouldn't have done, but use the same setting, and then the volume was muted, and we looked at the signal meter and there it was. So I wasn't particularly happy with it. In fairness, it did have some problems there. The other thing is, I had a quick look at it on the little spectrum analyzer, and 2 meters isn't that clean. There's a fair number of harmonics that displayed on the one I was testing. So I wasn't best pleased afterwards. I should have checked it before we did 145 Alive, but I checked it afterwards. So, in fairness, well, it was a reasonably priced radio. It costs, Chris Howard told me it cost him £135. At the moment, they seem to be going for £160 online when I had a quick look before recording this. The newer ones online say that they have a multicolour display. The one I had didn't. That doesn't matter, that wasn't important. Programming was very easy, but in fairness, the radio became a pain to use after a while. And the boys doing the 145 Alive went back to using their Yaesu mobile rig for the last half of the session, and they found it far more easy to use. So, good points. Well, it's cheap. Its program is good. I like that. Audio's not bad on transmit and receive. And that would be it. Bad points, well, unless you're going to just set it up and use it in local mode, you're going to talk to your friend who's just down the road, or you want to do communications between cars when you're out following each other, it would be perfectly acceptable if it wasn't for some of the harmonics. But in fairness, trying to use it in the way we would use it, I wasn't that impressed. Now, that's my feelings. I'll be honest with you. Others might say, no, you're talking rubbish, Martin. Possibly there could be a firmware upgrade that will fix a couple of the problems we spotted. I don't know, but in fairness, I'm just reviewing the model I have in front of me. So all in all, would I buy one? No, quite honestly not. For the sort of £120, £150 model, you could probably pick up a second-hand Yaesu ICOM or Kenwood rig that somebody's decided they've upgraded, and that will work probably far better. Sorry, mate, but Chris, I think you've got a lemon here. I hope this was of interest.
The ICQ Podcast. Come for a moment. Stay for an hour.
Well, everybody, I really hope you've enjoyed our review there of the Hiroyasu CQ7373. If you have one and say you agree or disagree or send your reviews to us, we'd appreciate your feedback. You can contact us via the usual social media channels or by going to the ICQ Podcast webpage, and you can drop us a line there, so we really would appreciate you doing that from there. We'd also like to thank our monthly and subscription donors for their very kind donations in keeping your ICQ podcast advert free. If you've found some value in today's show and you'd like to show your support for our continued work, please visit ICQPodcast.com/donate, where say you can make a contribution to us, and say we really would greatly appreciate it. We'd like to thank Dan, KB6 November Uniform, Caryn, KD2 Golf Uniform Tango, and Edmund, Mike 0 Mike November Golf for taking part in the News Roundtable. Many thanks, guys, for joining Martin M1MRB for that section of the show. Right, well, that just about sums up episode 454 of your ICQ Amateur Ham Radio podcast. We'll be back as always in a fortnight's time with your next episode. As always, hope you continue to enjoy the hobby. 73s.